In the late centuries of Japan's warring states, when regional powers struggled to impose order on a fractured land, a single institution cultivated a ritual so feared that its name survived only in scattered testimonies, coded references, and the whispered recollections of those who lived close enough to sense its shadow. It was a test shaped not by battlefield demands, but by the political anxieties of leaders who believed that loyalty, obedience, and endurance could be engineered through controlled suffering. And at the center of this system stood women, selected, pressured, and conditioned, who entered a closed world where expectation overshadowed identity, and where only those with the deepest reserves of inner strength emerged with their lives and voices intact.
The structure that guided this ritual did not rely on spectacle. It relied on fear, the quiet, pervasive kind that seeped into communities, reminding families that their daughters could be summoned at any moment. The authorities claimed it was a path to honor, a purification of spirit, a method to forge protectors for the elite. But beneath these sanctioned justifications lived a different truth, one of systemic control, harsh discipline, and conditions no one should endure, preserved through silence rather than celebration. The women who stepped into this process did so surrounded by layers of expectation they could not openly challenge, their futures determined by officials who understood the power of secrecy far more than the power of compassion.
In recounting the stories that remain, we confront not only a concealed chapter of Japan's past, but also the universal problem of how empires justify the pressure they impose on the vulnerable. It is precisely because these accounts were designed to fade that they demand attention now. And it is for this reason that reflections like this one exist, to preserve what official records neglected. In the work of dark inquest history, such concealed narratives are not allowed to slip silently into oblivion. This video explores the secret ritual so terrifying only Japan's strongest women survived it. During the late Sengoku and early Edo transitions, fear governed as effectively as law. Military rulers sought stability through obedience, and obedience, in their view, required systems that could test absolute resolve. From these priorities emerged a clandestine rite known among local families as the trial of endurance, though those who lived closest to its reality insisted that this name concealed more than it revealed. It was not public, it was not ceremonial, and it was never openly discussed by those who supervised it. Yet its mechanisms shaped entire regions, altering the social hierarchy, influencing marriage alliances, and defining the limits of autonomy for countless women. Those selected often came from households perceived as resilient, disciplined, or politically useful. Their strengths were evaluated, quietly recorded, and compared. What the authorities sought was not physical dominance, but psychological resilience, the ability to comply under extreme pressure, to remain composed despite isolation, and to demonstrate unwavering self-control during rounds of enforced endurance.
No documentation details the precise structure of these trials, but the surviving testimonies describe long periods of silence, strict separation, and the constant threat of severe mistreatment should any rule be broken. For some, it became a battle not against an external enemy, but against the tightening grasp of a system designed to test the limits of the human spirit. To the communities observing from afar, the ritual became a symbol of dread. Mothers dreaded the arrival of official messengers. Fathers understood that resistance could be interpreted as disloyalty. Young women learned early that composure was not a virtue, but a necessity. Those who returned were forever marked, not with visible signs, but with a manner of stillness, a disciplined calm that hinted at the pressures they endured.
And those who did not return were spoken of in softened terms, as if acknowledging their fate too directly risked unwanted attention. Wave after wave of political transitions hardened the ritual rather than dissolving it. Each new leader, seeking authority over the instability inherited from the past, clung to established methods of control. The trial itself evolved into a tool for identifying potential attendants, negotiators, or guardians for high-ranking households. Women who survived became both respected and isolated, admired for their strength, yet burdened by the silence they were forced to maintain. The deeper they progressed through each stage, the tighter the mechanisms of institutional power enclosed them.
The first escalation of this conflict emerged as the empire sought to standardize the ritual. Supervisors were appointed, records were coded, and expectations were formalized. Those who enforced the process operated with emotionless precision, convinced that discipline served the greater good. But for the women within the system, each new rule represented another layer of constraint, another reminder that their lives were shaped not by choice, but by decree. And as pressure increased, the boundary between honor and oppression blurred, until the two were nearly indistinguishable. The second escalation arrived when regional authorities began using the ritual to measure political compliance. Families aligned with rivals were watched more closely.
Daughters from contested territories were summoned in higher numbers. Participation, once framed as an honor, shifted toward obligation. In some regions, the summoning became so frequent that households lived in a constant state of uncertainty, adjusting their behavior to avoid scrutiny. To the women chosen, the trial no longer symbolized a test of personal resilience. It became a demonstration of their family's loyalty, one they could neither refuse nor reshape. And the quiet suffering behind closed doors intensified as their futures were shaped by political calculations rather than individual merit. As the system expanded, administrators introduced what they described as the inner rounds, a phase meant to reveal the candidate's ability to withstand isolation, structured tasks, and pressures that eroded time and perception. Those who recorded these rounds never described the details, but from fragments preserved in private diaries, it is clear that the psychological toll was immense. Days blended into weeks. Instructions arrived with no explanation. Every action was observed. Any deviation became a test. Their world shrank to routine, compliance, and constant anticipation of what might come next. This narrowing of freedom marked the third escalation. As each candidate advanced, she entered spaces designed to erase distraction, community, and comfort. Supervisors emphasized emotional discipline above all else. They insisted that a guardian serving the elite must possess a spirit unshaken by uncertainty. But the cost of this conditioning carved through the identities of those who endured it. Some emerged quieter, others more withdrawn, and all carried an unspoken understanding that the empire's respect was given only after they had surrendered parts of themselves no one could name. To the authorities, this transformation signaled success. To those who lived through it, it marked the beginning of a solitude that could never fully be undone. The darkest wave of escalation began when the ritual's secrecy was enforced through strict control of information. Supervisors warned participants that failure to comply with confidentiality rules would invite consequences for their families. This tactic ensured silence not through loyalty, but through fear. Stories that might have revealed the truth of the trial were buried before they could surface. Even women who completed the ritual rarely spoke of it, not because they lacked words, but because they understood the cost of revealing them. Archives from this era are riddled with gaps, omissions, and vague references to inner service protocols, suggesting that officials intentionally removed or obscured records that might expose the pressures the ritual imposed. When the conflict reached its peak, the ritual transformed from a test into a pathway that only a few could survive. The strongest women, those with unwavering composure, clarity of mind, and endurance shaped by years of cultural expectation, passed through final stages so taxing that later generations could describe them only in symbolic language. Some accounts speak of sealed chambers where candidates confronted the weight of their isolation. Others mention a final evaluation administered without witnesses, after which only select names were inscribed into hidden rosters. Those who emerged were said to possess a stillness so deep that even seasoned officials regarded them with quiet respect. But their survival came at a cost, etched not into the body, but into memory. An imprint of endurance formed under conditions no one should endure. At the height of this system, the climax unfolded not in a dramatic public event, but in a series of decisions made behind tightly closed doors. Leaders determined which women were to be assigned to high-ranking families, which were to be relocated, and which were to be quietly removed from the record. The silence surrounding these outcomes was deliberate. Official narratives framed the ritual as a necessary component of state stability, while personal accounts hinted at disappearances, unexplained relocations, and decisions that reshaped lives with no opportunity for appeal. The symbolism of this moment, doors closing, lanterns dimming, documents sealed, became a metaphor for the larger truth. The empire preserved order by burying stories that threatened to reveal the cost of its power. After the peak passed, the aftermath settled like dust over territories long accustomed to uncertainty. Political transitions softened some of the ritual's harsher expectations, yet its influence lingered in the social structure.
Women who survived the process became advisors, attendants, or guardians, whose presence carried both prestige and quiet sorrow. Their endurance was admired publicly, yet privately it served as a reminder of the pressures they had faced. Families spoke of them with a mixture of pride and caution. Villages regarded them as symbols of resilience, even as they remained bound by confidentiality that outlived the institutions that imposed it. In later eras, when scholars attempted to trace the origins of the ritual, they encountered only fragments, coded notes, oral memories, and references buried in peripheral documents. The empire justified the system as a means to ensure loyalty, discipline, and unity during turbulent times.
But subsequent historians recognize that it also functioned as a method of social control, targeting those whose strength made them valuable, yet whose independence made them threatening. The women who survived carried their stories in silence, and because they could not speak openly, the archives failed to preserve their experiences. But memory persists even when documentation fails. The strongest women who survived this ritual are remembered today not for the tasks they performed, but for the truth their endurance represents. That power often demands sacrifice from those least able to refuse, and that historical silence can obscure not only events, but entire generations of voices. In the end, the most haunting legacy of Japan's secret ritual is not the pressure it imposed, but the absence it left behind. A void where testimonials should exist, where explanations should have been preserved, where the lives of countless women should stand clearly recorded.
That silence resonates across centuries, reminding us that survival does not guarantee recognition, and that strength forged under oppression is often hidden rather than honored. To honor those forgotten voices and to preserve the stories history attempted to erase, subscribe to Dark Inquest History.